Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up from March 6th through 12th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 1 book. First this week I read Jane, a Murder. This is a book that I saw over on Jen Campbell's channel and didn't realize it was poetry until I picked it up. Or rather, I think I'd already put in an interlibrary hold by the time she got to the point where she talked about the fact that it's poetry in the video I was watching while placing that hold, so I got it anyway. Poetry is one of those things where I figure I should love it because it's a universal thing and people should be able to understand everything that's happening in a poem, and that's just not me. In fact, it's probably a very good idea that I heard Jen talk about this book and what it was about before reading it, otherwise I probably wouldn't have understood as much as I did. As I mentioned, this is a book written in poems, but it's also written in diary entries of the author's aunt, who was murdered before the author was even born. Essentially, Maggie Nelson grew up a little bit with the stories of Jane, found one of her diaries, and then started writing a book around her murder, but that was unsolved. However, as this one was going into production, there was a phone call because they found somebody, so there is basically a second part to this, and she actually wrote another book called, I believe, The Red Parts, and I've also put a hold on that one just because I'd like to know how it worked out. If this true crime premise sounds interesting to you and or you actually get a lot out of reading poetry, I definitely recommend this. Next we have Chef's Kiss, which is an adorable graphic novel about these college friends who have all just graduated, except for one of them. One of them is still ongoing in school, and moved into this house together. Our main character has some form of English degree, but every time he goes to an interview, because he doesn't have experience, nobody will hire him. It's even got to the point where he's like, fine, I'll be a garbage man, and he goes to an interview for that, and they won't give it to him because he doesn't have experience being a garbage man. None of the writing jobs will even look at the things that he's written or edited in the past. However, one day he's walking by this restaurant and it says help wanted, no experience necessary, so he decides to apply. However, when he gets there, the head chef is super weird, and I don't want to spoil any of that because I actually really enjoyed that weirdness. It is very strange, but also kind of fun. In order to get this job, he's given a little bit of training and has to jump through a lot of hoops, which impacts his home life as well. And he has to figure out if he really wants this job because he feels like he'll actually enjoy it, or if he really wants this job because the sous chef is really hot. Why not both? This is a new release that just came out this month and it was adorable. I very much enjoyed it. There were also some very funny moments with side characters such as his roommates or other people that worked at the restaurant. The other new release I read this week was The One True Me and You. These two characters are at the same Orlando hotel for 2 completely different reasons. Tegan is there because that hotel is hosting one of the many pageants that she has entered, and she actually really wants to win this one because this one comes with $25,000 scholarship, which she really needs if she's going to go to school. Kaylee is there because this hotel is also hosting the Great Con, which is a convention to do with a new Sherlock Holmes show that is all a rage. When it comes to Tegan, she is very excited to be there. She really does enjoy pageants and she's very, very good at them, and she gets to see her friend Jess, who she never sees except for when they're at pageants together. However, pageant world isn't exactly as advanced as she would like, and she knows that if she lets it slip that she's queer, she's not going to win. It also turns out that she is a very big fan of The Great Game, and she decides that even though she's supposed to be in bed by a certain time because pageant rules, she's going to sneak out and see if she can meet some of the people that are going to the convention. This, of course, is when she meets Kaylee. Now, Kaylee is actually a very popular fanfiction writer, and they are at this con with their real-life best friend as well as the 2 people that they all have a group chat with all the time. And this convention is where they are trying out they/them pronouns for the first time. They also have a checklist that includes kissing a girl for the first time because they're pretty sure they're bi, they just, really want to know for sure. From this, these 2 characters meet, cuteness ensues, drama ensues, a lot of very geeky things ensue. I read this and was just really missing going to conventions. I really wanted to go to BookNet Fest so badly after reading this, during reading this, before reading this, to be honest. What I also really enjoyed is there was one main antagonist because Miss North Carolina both goes to Kaylee's high school and is obviously in the pageant and is just kind of the worst. She's an antagonist to both of these characters and therefore drives the plot in that way. Like I said, this was adorable and I highly recommend it. On to the shows I watched. Of course, I stayed current on RuPaul's Drag Race, both the UK versus the World and the original flavor. When it comes to UK versus the World, it was the finale episode and my second place person won. When it comes down to it, that's not the worst thing in the world. This is All-Star Rule, so it was basically a lip-sync smackdown for the crown, which is always an entertaining premise. Even though the winner wasn't the person that I wanted to win, I feel no ill favor towards that queen. Everybody was doing great. It's a fun time. I'm not gonna shade anybody. I think that's the sound of somebody showering upstairs, so if you can hear that, sorry, but I'm not gonna stop filming. When it comes to the original flavor of Drag Race, we're into the 10th episode and there are still 8 queens, which is especially interesting watching it along with UK versus the World because that had a total of 6 episodes. In this episode we had Snatch Game, and spoiler alert, only one of the queens actually did very well. That resulted in RuPaul deciding that that one queen is safe next week, and next week there is going to be a massive lip sync challenge between the rest of the 7 competitors to see who gets kicked off. This really is the season that is never going to end, but sure, why not? I get more drag content, okay. This week I also watched No Exit, and this is a movie that I watched without actually reading the book first because sometimes you just do that. I have so many books on my TBR, I can't possibly read every single one of them, and I decided to just go ahead. It's fine. I'm still telling myself that because of the pervasive culture of you need to read the book first. This movie is about a woman who is in an addiction recovery center when she gets the news that her mother is in hospital, and she decides to leave by the only means that she has, which is stealing somebody's car, to try to go to the hospital. However, she hits a huge snowstorm on the way and is forced by the police to go to this rest stop where they've opened up the visitor center so people can stay in there until the storm passes. While she's outside trying to get bars on her cell phone so she can figure out what's going on with her mom, she comes across a van in the parking lot that has a child tied up inside. Now she has to figure out who on the inside belongs to this van and has this child restrained, and then save the child. Assuming the movie is anything like the book, I can really see how this would have been written and how I would have actually really enjoyed this book. There's complicated reveals, twists and turns, raising the stakes. I very much enjoyed it. This week when I finished watching Drag Race, I just kind of felt like I should watch a movie, so I clicked over to the movie tabs on the site that I was using to watch Drag Race, and I saw that they had this movie called Bestsellers, which already appeals to me because it sounds like it has to do with books. It also said that it was Michael Caine's last movie, and I went, okay, yeah, I need to watch this. Then, as it was loading, I realized that he is opposite Aubrey Plaza, which just, yes. This movie centers 2 characters. One of them is an aging author who lives alone, except for with his cat, who is very adorable. He published a huge book in the 1970s, but hasn't published anything since then. On the other side, we have this young publicist who has inherited the company from her father, and you can tell the company is not doing very well. In fact, somebody else is really trying to buy it out from under her. She decides to go in the basement, revisit some contracts, and realizes that that author that we saw before actually owes the publishing house another book. In fact, he was already paid the advance back in the 70s, so they don't even have to pay him, they just have to get a manuscript out of him. From here, absolute chaos ensues. I very much enjoyed seeing these 2 actors together because they did a great job playing off each other. I also really enjoyed seeing how things progressed and the reveals of the story. I saw a lot of things coming ahead of time, but there were also ways these characters acted that I wouldn't have seen ahead of time. So it was this weird mixture of being heartfelt and interesting, where at the same time I kind of knew how it was going to end. That being said, that did not detract from my enjoyment of it. You might remember that 2 weeks ago I watched the original Jumanji movie, and this week I watched the first of the new Jumanji movies, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle. Firstly, I didn't realize there was more than one new Jumanji movie, but here we are. This one starts off a year after the last one in 1996, where somebody is running on the beach and finds this weird game board, and it brings it to his son, is basically like, here's a game, and the son is basically like, who plays board games anymore? And I looked at the board and it looks like it could be the original board they used in the 1990s. If not, they did a very good job of remaking it. In any case, the board basically hears this feedback, and then when you hear the drums again and he goes to investigate the board and open it up again, instead of being the board that we know, it's just a little game cartridge. He pops that into one of his consoles and then he is sucked into the game. Then, approximately 20 years later, some kids in detention find the same game and are also sucked into it. The fun thing about this movie, if you're not already aware, is once these kids are sucked into the game, they inhabit these avatars based on the characters they chose at the beginning, and those avatars are played by grown-ups. Most notably, a little Jewish scrawny white kid becomes The Rock, and a very vapid teenage girl becomes Jack Black. This continuation of this franchise was way funnier than it had any right to be, and I'm excited to see what comes next. I don't understand how they're gonna do a next, but here we are. The book that I listened to this week was Devil House by John Darnielle, whose name you might know because he is the frontman of the Mountain Goats. I don't really listen to all that much music though, so I can't name any of his songs. Essentially all I know about the Mountain Goats is John Green is obsessed with the Mountain Goats. He even has a podcast called I Only Listen to the Mountain Goats. In any case, this one is super interesting. I think I've only ever read one other John Darnielle, and I'm pretty sure that one also had to do with a place that rents movies, so that was a unifying element to the last book that I remember of his. Actually, I think I might have read two. If both of these books are by John Darnielle, then I've read two by him, Wolf and White Van and Universal Harvester, and I believe it's Universal Harvester that had to do with videos. Anyway, in this book, at the beginning we are following a true crime writer. At some point in his career, he wrote a book called The White Witch about a case that happened in a different town. It got turned into a movie, so he's got a little bit of money. Somebody tells him about this house in this very small town in California, and figures that if he wants to do some really good investigative work, like he usually does for his stuff, he can actually buy that house and live in that house where some weird things went down, including a couple of murders. Through this book we see the process of him moving in, him recreating things, him telling about the history of this house that definitely didn't used to be a house. When it started out it was a restaurant, and then it turned into a bookseller type of magazine stand, and then it became an adult store, and then murders. And nobody's really lived in this house since. Interspliced into this, we also get to learn about the particulars of the White Witch case and how all of that went down, and you see some definite parallels. Throughout this book he interviews key players, and you can kind of understand how he maybe recreated some conversations that happened in Devil House before a couple of people were murdered there, but you never really know who did it. And then there's a fairly compelling twist at the end that I did not see coming and was actually pretty impactful, so I'm not going to tell you what that was. I am going to say that this does feel very disjointed at points, but because of the framing of the very end of the book, I feel like that was definitely intentional. And it's very hard to tell you why without you knowing what happens at the end of the book, so I'm going to leave it at that. As a little bit of bonus content, I don't usually talk about the games I play here because I don't play them often enough that they would always appear in this list, but we did start a new video game this week called Detroit Being Human, and as the credits were playing after we played the first part of it, I saw the name Jesse Williams, and I'm like, surely not the Jesse Williams I know of Grey's Anatomy fame, Jackson Avery, and yes, it is in fact him as a voice actor, and the character he voices looks exactly like him, so I was very excited about that. Also, the premise of this world where people use AIs for all their menial tasks, and these AIs are maybe coming into their own consciousness. Very, very intriguing, very much enjoying the game. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that is also down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!